So I am Harry, Harry Waters, as it says there under my name. You may have seen me on one or all of the social media channels. I apologise for that. As I said before we came on, I'll be in your cornflakes next, so just watch out for that. I have been a teacher of English for many years, since I had hair and before then, about 15 years now, and I've been working with the environment, sustainability for the last 6, and concentrating on it as my main focus for the last 2 years-ish with Renewable English. And also, I've also worked with various publishers on all sorts of different ideas. So thank you so much for inviting me, Green Action ELT. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I love all of this. I love the new branding, the new logo. It's fantastic. And I also love the idea of action, something I'm very much into, I guess, action. Just this morning, in fact, I was out with my daughter. We were walking the dog, and my daughter's really into litter picking and anti-plastic. As you can see, she's a member of Kids Against Plastic there. And we decided to invent a new kind of litter pick, where we sang our favourite song, and at the same time we were picking up cigarette butts, and we picked up over 100 cigarette butts in the space of The Other Side from The Greatest Showman. But anyway, action's what we love. But today, what we're going to quickly talk about, I don't want to keep you for too long because I'd love to go off for some breakout rooms shortly, but we're going to talk about some objections that we get as ELT teachers, from our co-workers, from our students, from parents, from whomever. And of course, some solutions. And you can see there, I used a hilarious joke by using chemistry, solution. Yeah, I've got quite a lot of dad jokes, I'm afraid. So let's very quickly look at some objections, and then we're going to look at some different green routines and some different green projects that we can do as well. But there's so many different things, and I want to hear from you and learn from you about what you would do and how you might do it, the objections that you have, the issues you come against as well. And there is a handout that I'll put in the chat in a moment. But anyway, for me, the biggest 2 objections that I ever get are these 2. I don't have any time and I'm not an expert. There are other ones like it's all doom and gloom, or who am I to tell a student what to do, or my students aren't interested in that. If anyone ever says my students aren't interested in the environment, ask them how many of their students are interested in mixed conditionals. Ask them how many of their students are interested in the present perfect. Not that many, but it is our job to make them interested. And the more passion you have, the better it will be. Another weird thing about me is I love flags. And in my early teaching career, all of my classes involved flags. So yeah, from about, there's probably quite a few sort of 18, 19, 20 to 25-year-olds out there with a weird array of flag knowledge that maybe most learners don't have. But again, no time, I'm not an expert. So let's look at some ideas for these different things. We're going to start with some green routines. What is a green routine? A green routine for me is when you do something on a regular basis. You know, when you don't have the time to spend months on figuring out how you're going to do this climate change issue, how you're going to do this, how you're going to do that, how you're going to do the other. Oh, we don't have time to set up all these projects. I can't, I can't go off and learn all this stuff before I come back and teach my students. So I like to have green routines. And we're going to go through those in just a moment. But before we do that, I completely forgot to mention, I can't believe I forgot to mention it. For me, the most important thing of all, the first step of all steps is get a plant in your classroom. For me, this is the number one part of being a green teacher, is to get a plant in your classroom. There are so many ideas and activities that can come from that. I don't have a huge amount of time to talk about it today, but maybe another day. But you can think of some ideas, stuff like propagating your plants and then giving those out as prizes to your students. You can see some of my plants from my online classes over there. But anyway, that's an aside. Get a plant. Students love it. Greens up your classroom straight away. Green routines. Okay, I'm just going to jump over here and disappear from here so you can actually see what's going on. The first green routine, in my opinion, are numbers. We don't talk enough about numbers in our ELT classrooms. I know that, maybe in some business English environments, you might get into numbers and, talk about the different ways that dates are formed and how you use commas in some languages and full stops in others, and the difference between a billion in Spanish and a billion in English. But we don't, usually we get to about 100 and then sort of stop like, oh, the numbers now. It to 100. Here we go. 101. There you go. You've got all the numbers now. And we don't really look closely enough at big numbers. Now, this is something I do even with my 6 and 7-year-olds. I don't always do it with these kind of environmental stats, but you can find these. I'm going to jump across to where you can find them. But before I do, just take a quick look at this. Have a quick look. So let's look at the acres of forest lost so far this year. 782,760 hectares, sorry, not acres. That's a lot of football pitches. One football pitch is about 1.6 hectares. So any mathematicians out there want to quickly figure it out, by all means, go ahead. So I would start the class by writing one of these stats up on the board. Any one of those different stats are perfectly reasonable to use in class. I would then, now I'm just going to share my screen. So if something weird pops up on the screen, I apologize. I would then go to, not that, obviously. That was just me making sure I had all the correct details. I'll go over here to worldometers.info. Now, this is on the handout if you need it. I will go here and I would then have a look. So at the start of the class, I'd take one, and then at the end of the class, I'd go back and look at it again. So we can see there that the forest loss so far this year is now 792,706. So it's gone up about 10,000 hectares since I took that picture last night at about, I'm not sure when, but it was last night. And you can see the vast difference that's happened, and you can see these things changing. And for example, if you're going to do CO2 emissions, the difference between the start of the class and the end of the class is absolutely insane. We can see it's at 5.5 billion at the moment. And when I stop sharing, we'll go back and we'll see where it's at. Now, these numbers, they're big numbers. They're kind of scary numbers as well. So some of your students might get a bit like, that's not cool. So another option you could do is I don't use Google. I use Ecosia or Ecosia, however you want to pronounce it. And with that, you can count the number of trees that have been planted at the start and at the end of class. And again, it's another big number. And you can encourage your students to perhaps use that as well, if you so desire. Another really good one is the daily CO2. It's updated every day, and obviously it's daily CO2. That's a very interesting thing to say there, Harry. And you can look at, so here today, for example, this year, there are 420 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, whereas this time last year, it was about 4 under that. So it's gone up almost a whole % in just a year. Now, these numbers look a bit absurd and ridiculous. You can divert. I do have a class on ppm, which if you ever want it, please do get in touch. And it looks at, 420 out of a million doesn't seem like a lot until you think the first time it was ever recorded over 400 was actually in 2013. And the first time it was over 400 for an entire month was 2015. So that was 7 years ago, and it's gone up 20 points in those 7 years. And if we look at pre-industrial revolution, they think, judging by Arctic ice, it was around 280. So there are all these different things that you can raise students' awareness, and you can just drop it in there. You don't have to be doing a class about climate change to put these numbers in there. It's, they can be absolutely, you could be doing a class about, I don't know, beard combs, because let's be honest, if we don't have a class about beard combs, we don't have a class. Hi there, Vanessa. Thanks for joining us. Lovely to see you. So numbers are, for me, are the first and most important part of getting your green routine started. They're very easy to slide into the class whenever is best for you. Okay, so let's get rid of the numbers and let's think about activists. Having a look at your favorite activist, or getting your students to bring in their favorite activist. This obviously depends on the age group of your students, but if you're teaching anyone between the ages of, I'm going to say 11 and 25, then they're going to be very much into Insta. They're going to be very much into TikTok. So let them have a look. Let them go out on Meek from Kids Against Plastic. And then he'll go up there 5 minutes to talk about what they're doing, what their aim is, what they're trying to do. This way, you're going to create more of a greener mindset in your students. They're going to be more interested. They're going to see it in action, and you can help them find their passion. I know the Kids Against Plastic have guided my daughter in an incredible way. She's so passionate about it that last weekend, in fact, we went out and did a town-wide litter pick and collected over 4,000 pieces of litter. So it can be so empowering for them to see what other people are doing, jump on their bandwagon perhaps, and share with the rest of the class the great things these other people are doing. And I know it's a horrible fact, to be honest, but when we're talking about motivation, most of our motivation is to make a better world. Let's be honest, that's true. We want a better world. We want a healthier world for our children, for our children's children. A lot of teenagers want to have more followers. So this will help if they can see, look, they've got 26,000 followers almost, and they just pick up litter. They also have done TED Talks, all of these inspiring things. So those 5 minutes in the class can really, really help. And let's be honest, we've always got at least 3 to 5 minutes that we can use in the classroom. Oh, that's going all over my face there. Outrageous. Terrible planning there, Harry, where you put that. News, again, the same as you would with the activist. Just do 5 minutes on climate news. I often do it as a closing to the class. 5 minutes climate news. It can be positive news if you want it to be. It can be about new inventions that are coming out. It can be about a new coral that's being discovered, untouched in Tahiti. It can be about all sorts of different things. Once you start by bringing these in, your students will then catch on, and they'll say, hey, teacher, do you reckon I could bring one in next week? Or I saw an interesting article. And it's all these simple things that your classroom will be getting greener, but your students will be thinking greener as well. They'll be going off to find their own bits and pieces and some fun and interesting things to do. And then reflect. Reflect on what you have learned that day. Reflect on the lesson that you're doing. Spend 5 minutes, 6 minutes of critical thinking at the end of your class. Often you go through the new vocab that you've got on the board. Brilliant. Love it. Vocab's super important when you're learning a language. But also just get them to stop and think. Now, you can do this with the Sustainable Development Goals, something I really encourage people to use as a tool for learning. I think they're fantastic for that. But you can get your students to stop at the end of the class and think about what they've done that day and how that affects the planet. So let's say you're talking about fish. Okay, let's talk about life underwater. how does fishing affect the ocean? Are you troubled by the fact in 2050 there'll be more plastic in the ocean than there are fish? All of these ideas at the end of the class to talk about and refocus your students on the environment. And your class can be about anything. If it's about sport, yes, learn all the sport vocabulary, but then think, how does sport affect the planet? Well, I don't know. How does football affect the planet? It doesn't. It's just, people playing against each other, getting paid loads of money. Well, number one, where are they investing their money? Number two, how do the fans get to the stadium? Number three, what happens with the food at the end that they don't eat in the stadium? What happens about the traveling fans? What happens about the European ties when people have to go to another country? They go and stay in a hotel. In that hotel, they have lots of food. So there's all of these different things that connect to the environment. And every single subject you do has a connection to the environment, because every action has, I'm not going to go into Newton's laws here, but every action has an impact on the planet. So they are some very simple 4 quick green routines that you can use. I'm going to jump over now, gone back to full face Harry, so you can now see the dog again. I know that's all you wanted to see anyway. And we're going to have some green projects. We're going to have some green project ideas. Now, the first one is a green calendar. This is probably one of my favorite things to do. I love birthdays. I think birthdays are super important. Anyone who's ever seen me talking before will know that. In fact, I spoke about birthdays just yesterday. But get your students to tell you when their birthday is and what they're interested in. So let's choose the 3rd of March, for example. Maybe someone's birthday is on the 3rd of March and they really love pizza. Their favorite thing is pizza. Well, okay, we can make that pizza day, and maybe we can talk about having a vegan pizza that day. And then we can also talk about the impact of of livestock on the environment. Or maybe someone loves football. Again, you can talk about football, but go through like the UNESCO dates that they have, World Earth Day, World Tiger Day, World Wear a Secondhand Shirt Day, World Do Your Buttons Up Day, Harry. All of those different days, but do it with your students and their birthdays. That way it puts the focus on them. They can come in with the ideas and it gets them thinking beforehand as well. Okay, next one, a dragon's den. So get your students to create some kind of sustainable business, get them into being entrepreneurial, and get them to present that business to the class like a dragon's den, and the students will decide who they're going to invest in. And this is one that, you can do, you can prepare at home. You can do this one in online classes, hybrid classes, face-to-face classes. All the classes can have a dragon's den. Next up, I love this one, the most colourful meal. The most colourful meal does exactly what it says on the tin. I think forcing veganism and plant-based diets down students' throats is never going to work. They're going to object to it. They don't want a bald, bearded man telling them that, the easiest thing to help the environment is to go vegan and reinvest your money elsewhere. They don't want to listen to that. However, if you give them a challenge for who can have the most colourful meal, they're going to love it. They're going to go home, they'll take pictures of it. You can get them to make a reel of it, upload it to Instagram. Whoever gets the most likes is the winner. Whoever can get it reshared by somebody is a winner. That's another thing to do with the environmental activist. Get them to connect with them and speak to them. You can even see if they can get the environmental activist to speak in their classes. And if anyone gets Greta, get on the phone to me, please. I've got a 310-day campaign to get her to speak to me. She just isn't listening. So I did this the other day with my daughter's class. She has an allotment at school. We cut the lettuce. Then they all went home. They had to make their most colourful salad, and we shared all the pictures. That was then shared on the school Instagram. And it's just super fun. And the students then want to eat that food. Suddenly beetroot is appealing to them. How beetroot isn't appealing, I don't know. It's purple and it tastes like fruit. Man, beetroot wins for me every day. Even roasted beetroot, it's so good. And a couple of quick more ideas. SDG posters and video campaigns, or just poster and video campaigns in general. Get your students to find an issue, find their passion, make a poster about it, or make a short video campaign. Students love using videos. Don't waste that opportunity. It's a great way for them to listen back to what they're doing as well. Try and get it to be as natural as possible. They can write a script, but not stick to the script exactly, because so many things are done now completely unscripted and it's more natural. And so have a bones script for them to use for their video campaign, and try and get them on camera. As we can see, students nowadays are much more natural on camera, probably thanks to all that dancing they do on TikTok. Not something you'll catch me doing on TikTok. You will find me on TikTok though, at Renewable English, mostly picking up litter. It's what I do most of the time. And finally, why not do an upcycled art gallery, where you can, any upcycled project with old plastic bottles and so on, maybe get students to make a toy or a game or a robot, something like that, with their recyclables, and a secondhand fashion show. So maybe a clothes swap, get them to do a fashion show, get them to do mend some of their clothes, get them to bring some things in. You can sit there, you can teach them how to sew, you can learn how to sew yourself. There are all these different ideas that you can do with these projects. There are so many more as well. Projects take time, routines don't. So for me, that's the big thing there. I'm very lucky in the fact that my classes are mostly volunteer classes. I get people in who want to learn, and I want to teach because I want to have a face-to-face class, a hybrid class, and an online class. I want to teach adults, children, and teens, because I want to be able to use these ideas. So I'm very lucky in the fact that I can design my own syllabus completely. So for me to do these different projects, it's not particularly difficult. I know it's much more difficult to do them in terms of when you have a strict syllabus to stick to. A lot of these can be done as kind of homework, and let's try and make homework more interesting and not just page 7 of the workbook, because you have to finish the workbook because the parents are paid for the workbook. So you've just got to make sure you get through the workbook, because we all know that that's the best way to learn, isn't it? Go home and finish the workbook. Okay, I think that's about time. Fantastic. Thank you very much.